Have you ever found yourself wondering why, in a relationship, there always seems to be someone extra involved? Maybe it's an ex-partner that the other person insists on mentioning, or a coworker who somehow always comes up in conversations as an example. This uncomfortable and confusing feeling may be the result of a manipulative emotional dynamic known as narcissistic triangulation. But what does that really mean? Triangulation is not just jealousy or insecurity. It's a tool used to destabilize, control, and create silent conflicts within the relationship. It makes you feel compared, evaluated, and often inferior to a third person, even if that person isn't actually present in the real context. The most intriguing part is that while we're experiencing these situations, we often don't realize that something is wrong. Today, we're going to dive into this delicate and revealing topic. You'll understand how this tactic works, identify the subtle signs that may be present in your life, and learn to recognize the traps before they cause deep damage. If you've ever felt like you needed to prove your worth in a relationship, this video was made especially for you. Stay with me until the end, because what I'm about to share might change the way you see your emotional connections. My name is Lauren Mitchell, and my purpose with this channel is to show that the problem was never you. If this content resonates with you, like the video and subscribe to our channel. Let's start by understanding what triangulation is. Narcissistic triangulation is an emotional tactic used to create a power play within relationships. It happens when someone inserts, directly or indirectly, a third party into the dynamic, whether by mentioning someone from the past, a coworker, or even imaginary figures. This third person becomes a tool to generate comparisons, insecurities, and conflicts, placing the victim in an uncomfortable position. Imagine constantly hearing phrases like, "You know, my ex always did this better," or "so-and-so would have understood this situation more maturely." These comments may seem casual, but they carry a clear intention: to emotionally destabilize. The person using triangulation seeks to maintain control of the relationship, planting doubts about the victim's self-worth. And the worst part is that often these messages are so subtle that we end up accepting them without questioning. The impact of this practice goes beyond momentary discomfort. Triangulation creates a constant sense of competition, making the victim feel pressured to prove their worth. This can lead to a cycle of excessive effort to please, while self-esteem gradually diminishes. After all, how can you feel confident when you're always being compared to someone who seems better? This dynamic doesn't happen by chance. It's designed to place the other person in a position of vulnerability, ensuring that the manipulator maintains emotional superiority. When you start noticing patterns like these, it's important to stop and reflect. Are you dealing with a healthy relationship or a carefully constructed emotional trap? Now, how do you identify narcissistic triangulation? Identifying narcissistic triangulation can be challenging, especially because it's often disguised as compliments or casual observations. However, there are clear signs that can help you recognize this dynamic before it causes greater harm. One of the first indicators is the constant use of comparisons. If you notice that your partner or someone close to you is always mentioning another person as a reference, whether to highlight qualities you don't have or to point out your flaws, this could be a red flag. Another common sign is conditional praise. For example, when someone says something like, "You're amazing, but do you know who else was like that? So-and-so." In this case, the compliment seems positive, but it's accompanied by a comparison that undermines your uniqueness. These comments are designed to make you feel inadequate, even when you're trying your best. Additionally, watch for a pattern of victimization. The manipulator might say things like, "No one ever understood me like so-and-so did," or "At least my ex tried to help me." These phrases put you in a position of inferiority and create invisible pressure to fill emotional gaps. To make this tactic even more effective, the manipulator may use figures who aren't even present in the relationship. It could be a distant friend, a relative, or even a fictional person. The intention is always the same: to generate insecurity and maintain emotional control. Consider this example. Maria was in a relationship where her partner constantly mentioned his ex-girlfriend as more organized. He never directly criticized Maria, but these remarks were enough to make her start questioning her own competence. She began to try harder, striving to meet an invisible standard, but it was never enough. This is a clear example of how triangulation works in practice. Now stop and think. Have you ever experienced something similar? Reflecting on these patterns may be the first step toward understanding if you're dealing with a manipulative emotional dynamic. Recognizing these signs can help you clearly see what's happening and prepare you to face the situation. Now, a relevant question. Why does the narcissist use triangulation? Triangulation is not a random behavior. It is a strategic tool used by people with narcissistic traits to maintain emotional control and feed their fragile ego. At the core of this dynamic is the constant need for validation and superiority. The manipulator uses triangulation to ensure that he or she is always at the top of the emotional hierarchy, while the victim struggles to reach an impossible standard. One of the central reasons is insecurity. Despite an appearance of exaggerated confidence, many narcissistic individuals carry deep doubts about their own worth. By projecting these insecurities onto others, they manage to divert attention from their own vulnerabilities. When comparing you to someone else, the manipulator reinforces their belief that no one is good enough except themselves. This narrative serves to protect their distorted self-image while undermining yours. Additionally, triangulation functions as a form of control. When you constantly feel compared or evaluated, you naturally begin to look for ways to meet the other person's expectations. This creates a vicious cycle where you work harder and harder to be accepted, while the manipulator retains emotional power. It's a subtle form of manipulation that causes the victim to invest more in the relationship, even when being devalued. This tactic is also closely tied to the cycle of narcissistic abuse. During the idealization phase, the manipulator may place you on a pedestal, making you believe you are special. However, as the relationship progresses, triangulation comes into play as part of the devaluation phase. Comparing you to others is a way to diminish your value in their eyes, paving the way for future criticism or even outright rejection. By understanding these motivations, it becomes easier to realize that triangulation has nothing to do with you. It is a projection of the manipulator's needs and insecurities. Recognizing this can help dismantle the distorted narrative that was created and allow you to see the situation for what it truly is, an attempt to control and destabilize. The emotional effects of narcissistic triangulation can be profound and long-lasting, often leaving marks that extend beyond the end of the relationship. When you are constantly being compared or placed in a position of inferiority, your self-esteem begins to erode gradually. This silent erosion is one of the most common and devastating damages caused by this dynamic. Imagine spending months or even years trying to prove your worth to someone who never seems satisfied. Each conditional compliment or comparison makes you internalize the idea that you are not enough. This feeling of inadequacy can extend to other areas of life, affecting your confidence at work, in friendships, and even how you view yourself outside the context of the relationship. The victim often finds themselves questioning, "Am I really capable?" Or, "Why doesn't anyone value me the way I should be valued?" Another significant impact is emotional isolation. As the manipulator introduces third parties into the dynamic, you may start to feel alone within the relationship itself. The constant sense of competition creates a barrier between you and the other person, preventing the development of genuine connection. This isolation can intensify when you realize that no matter how hard you try, it will never be possible to meet the unrealistic expectations set by the manipulator. In the long term, these effects can evolve into difficulties trusting new relationships. After experiencing triangulation, it's common for a person to develop a fear of being betrayed again or of not being good enough. This can lead to patterns of self-sabotage or even avoiding future connections out of fear of repeating painful experiences. Moreover, the emotional damage can manifest as anxiety, chronic insecurity, or low self-confidence. Even after the toxic relationship ends, these feelings can persist, requiring time and often professional support to overcome. Recognizing these effects is essential to beginning the journey of healing and personal reconstruction. And what are the best ways to deal with triangulation? Dealing with narcissistic triangulation may seem like a monumental challenge, but it is possible to face this dynamic in an assertive and healthy way. The first step to freeing yourself from this emotional trap is recognizing the signs before they cause irreparable damage. When you notice patterns of comparison, conditional praise, or frequent mentions of third parties, it's time to stop and assess the situation clearly. This initial awareness is crucial to breaking the cycle of manipulation. One of the most effective strategies is setting clear boundaries. This means communicating to the manipulator that certain behaviors will not be tolerated. For example, if they constantly mention someone else as a reference, you can calmly say, "This comparison makes me uncomfortable, and I'd prefer if we avoided this kind of conversation." Although the manipulator may try to downplay your concerns or even blame you for feeling this way, standing firm in your position is essential. Well-defined boundaries help protect your self-esteem and prevent the other person from continuing to use triangulation as a tool of control. Another important approach is seeking external support. Talking to trusted friends or family members about what you're going through can bring a new perspective and help you see the situation more clearly. Additionally, seeking professional help, such as a psychologist or therapist, can be transformative. These professionals can offer tools to strengthen your self-esteem, manage the emotions generated by triangulation, and develop strategies to distance yourself from toxic relationships. It's also important to remember that the problem isn't with you. Triangulation is a projection of the manipulator's insecurities and needs, not a reflection of your true worth. Working on reconnecting with your self-confidence is an essential step to breaking free from this cycle. List your qualities, celebrate your achievements, and remind yourself that you deserve to be valued for who you are, without comparisons or conditions. If necessary, consider the possibility of completely distancing yourself from the relationship. In many cases, the manipulator won't change their behavior, and staying in the relationship may only worsen the emotional damage. Distancing yourself can be painful, but it's also an act of self-care and self-respect. By prioritizing your well-being, you'll be creating space for healthier and more balanced connections in the future. By adopting these strategies, you'll be taking control of your emotional narrative and preventing triangulation from continuing to dictate how you feel about yourself. Recognizing the problem, setting boundaries, and seeking support are powerful steps toward emotional freedom. We've reached the point where you now know what narcissistic triangulation is, how to identify it, why it happens, and what its emotional impacts are. We've also explored practical strategies for dealing with this dynamic and protecting your mental health. Now, it's important to reflect on how this information can be applied to your life. If you've ever felt undervalued or compared in a relationship, it might be time to take a closer look at the emotional patterns present in that connection. Recognizing an emotional trap like triangulation doesn't just mean identifying toxic behaviors. It also means taking the power to decide how you want to live your relationships. You deserve to be in an environment where your value is recognized without conditions or comparisons. Remember that no one has the right to undermine your self-esteem or make you feel inferior. If this video brought you important insights, share your reflections in the comments. Your experience may help others see similar situations from a new perspective. Additionally, I invite you to explore other content on this channel about healthy relationships and self-care. Every step you take toward understanding these dynamics is a step toward a more balanced and fulfilling life. In the description of this video, you'll find our official link. Remember, you are light. Never forget to shine.